LeBron James, he's won it 4 times. The MVP award, as we forecast who will win it in 2020. But it's been quite a while since LeBron has taken home the honors, as we welcome you back inside of our studio here in Atlanta, focusing in here on what the Lakers' game plan will be, starting with LeBron. Smitty, how do you think LeBron should play this? And while winning a championship is the big prize that he wants, isn't there a little bit of pride in him that wants a 5th into that real rarefied air in the NBA to win another MVP?
You know, I think for him I don't think he comes out gunning. But guys, I think you got to give all the other guys around you confidence, especially Anthony Davis, making him in the focal point. But I also think for LeBron James, this point guard play, he's always been a point guard, Sekou.
Right.
I'm telling you, I worry about him if they have a starting lineup where he has to guard the point guard on the other end. This is where you talk about load management. It's going to take a lot out of him, especially where the NBA is playing right now, so many pick and rolls. But I think for LeBron James, winning, getting his numbers, also feeding these guys, and then he can take a period about 10, 20 games where he can put up monster numbers and get into that race, but I don't think he'd come out gunning.
I don't know if LeBron needs monster numbers. His numbers have been so consistently high in so many categories. He's always played at this certain level. He's been a victim to me when I look back on the way this vote has gone down throughout his career. He's been a victim of his own greatness.
Right.
And I'm not here to crank up the LeBron fan train, but I'm saying this is a guy who's performed at such a high level so consistently over the course of his career. We've taken it for granted. We've just assumed that there would be some huge drop-off at some point, and there never has been. So I don't know if he can make a statistical campaign for MVP, but I think the team success, if his team's number one in the West, it's going to be him or Anthony Davis anyway in that conversation, and maybe both of them.
Let's not forget, it's been about a decade since he's had this much time off heading into a season because the Lakers did not make the playoffs. The report came out over the summer that LeBron has informed the Lakers that he's okay with deferring and making Anthony Davis the focal point of the offense. Is that smart in terms of the MVP award? Is that smart in terms of the success of the Lakers?
I think it's smart to keep Anthony Davis engaged and put him at the forefront. LeBron James' game is always deferred to winning. I wouldn't say he's deferred to other players on his team. He's always deferred to what's best for winning. And I think this is best for the Lakers, making Anthony Davis the focal point of getting him engaged. You're our guy. You are our guy. So I think it's smart what LeBron James has done.
Smitty, you followed very closely LeBron and Dwayne Wade teaming up, and you really, in some incredible sit-downs, got some real truth serum into the veins of Dwayne Wade and LeBron James back in the day about how they found success. Do you think he takes from that experience what happened in year 2 after losing to Dallas in the finals and says, I'm going to apply that to my second year in LA?
Yeah, he could. I think he will be able to learn a lot from what Dwayne Wade did from when they gathered those big three. LeBron James was definitely the better player than Dwayne Wade, but that was Dwayne Wade's team. And Dwayne Wade, in my opinion, did the right thing. He stepped back and let it be LeBron James at the forefront. Still finished games, in my opinion, Sekou, but I thought Dwayne Wade's narrative was LeBron's the guy.
Right.
He's the guy, and I think LeBron is doing the same thing for Anthony Davis.
I think they're at much different stages of their careers, though, too. I mean, Anthony Davis is still trying to reach, the mountaintop in his career, whereas D. Wade had the comfort of knowing, hey, I've already been there and done that, and I'm confident enough in myself and in my game, my legacy, to allow a guy who I know is as good or better than I've ever been to shine in that light. This is a situation where LeBron is trying, for so many reasons, to put Anthony Davis on that pedestal. I would imagine he's going to come out and do everything he can to defer to AD while not taking away from the bottom line for the Lakers, which is winning every night.
If LeBron were to win an MVP, his 5th, that would be rarefied air. You know it's even more rare than winning 5 MVPs? It's winning it as a rookie. Should we consider Zion Williamson in the 2020 MVP race? We're coming back on NBA TV's Forecast MVP.
Exponentially greater for him on a nightly basis. And we know how fantastic he was on the best regular season team in the league last year. So it becomes a thing where you're chasing not only whatever the standard is around the league, you're chasing whatever ridiculously high standard you set for yourself, which is something that LeBron James is really familiar with. It becomes a deal where your numbers could be just as good as they were last year, but if your team wins 5 fewer games.
Yep.
It seems like, well, maybe you didn't have as great a season as you did. So Giannis is really chasing the ghost of his past season in an attempt to win a second straight MVP. And think about some of the great players and the great seasons we've seen in recent years, and that hasn't happened. You know, if you thought, could Kevin Durant win a second straight MVP? Well, of course he could, if injuries or whatever doesn't happen. James Harden would tell you that he's won 4 straight, right? You know, in his mind, but hasn't taken home a trophy. Russell Westbrook has averaged a triple-double 3 straight seasons and doesn't have MVP hardware to show for it each time. So it just becomes a deal where you have to chase not only whatever the pack is doing, you got to try and chase the standard you've set for everybody else.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, people are voters, and a lot of people out there are going to look at Giannis. Is he averaging the same amount of points and stats? The one thing for Giannis, I don't know if they have the best record in the entire NBA. That's going to be another standard that's set for him. The one edge I do think he has, because I thought he could have won the Defensive Player of the Year last year as well. And then unfortunately for him, nothing against his teammates, we're all going to say he doesn't have that sidekick that can be a dominant all-star.
Doesn't that work towards his favor?
In my opinion, towards his favor. But I think Chris Middleton is a fantastic player. I would love to have him on my team. People just don't think of Chris Middleton, and I don't think his game is enough to be able to say, without Giannis, we can dominate and go through Chris Middleton and win games. Chris Middleton is a great player, so I think that's in Giannis's favor.
Well, just talking from the MVP standpoint, he's not going to have anybody on his own team taking away votes like so many of these other guys, including a guy like James Harden. Last season, for the 4th time in the last 5 years, Harden finished in the top 2 in MVP voting, but last year he took his offensive game to the next level. He led the league in scoring once again, and he did it by a boat race, scoring more than 8 points per game than the man who scored the second most points last season in the league. One may say James Harden has now
just sort of witnessing this greatness.
I don't think anybody could argue how spectacular and sensational every night James Harden was on the offensive end last year for the Houston Rockets. But over the summer, for it seems like the 4th year out of the last 5, the Rockets franchise, from members of the front office to James Harden himself, Sekou, have spent the summer telling us how the voters got it wrong. How do you think the voters perceive what the Rockets seem to be prioritizing, which is winning individual awards? Well,
I think the voters are looking at that being one of the many voters for the MVP award, and you're saying our votes are being validated in the end, because for all that Harden does in the regular season, his teams have come up woefully short in the postseason. And I know it's a regular season award, but if he's as good as the Rockets profess him to be year after year, in the minds of a lot of voters, you say, well, why isn't it translating to the team success that you need to have to go along with the kind of campaign that they wage year after year for James Harden? I will give him this. I heard him say earlier this summer that, he thought he lost the award on a narrative last season. He thought Giannis won it on narrative. Well, that's how James Harden won his first MVP.
It's funny how the narrative is written differently when you win versus when you lose. If the media has something against you, why did they give it to you the year before?
Exactly.
For me, I go back to what Sekou said, and I'm not defending the organization. I'm defending that it's a regular season award.
Right.
But I'm come from the school of thought, let everybody else talk about it versus yourself and your organization and your coaching staff.
Right.
But it is a regular season MVP award, and if you want to look at it, he's in that conversation.
Certainly.
And will always be in that conversation for, I think, in the next 2 or 3 years.
And for me, this tiebreaker was this simple. Again, from the beginning to the end of the season, Giannis and the Bucks were the best team in basketball, and Giannis never hit a big lull. For the first couple of months of the season, the Rockets were the 2nd worst team in the Western Conference, only better than the Phoenix Suns.
And that's the reason why I voted for him.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I voted for Harden, because they were that bad in the beginning. And he put them back in contention.
You don't feel like he deserves some of that blame for them having to dig out of that hole?
No, because there was no Chris Paul.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the Lakers here, and another team that's got a dynamic duo with LeBron and Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis seems to be more of a favorite, especially out there in the desert, as they see things as to who will win MVP. What type of pressure is on Anthony Davis this year, and do you feel like he can fulfill all of that?
A lot of pressure, Jared. One, winning. You've always been in New Orleans, and we saw glimpses of you as an individual and your team's winning. I think now, injuries, can you stay healthy? That's been a knock for Anthony Davis. And let's go with the soap opera saga, how he got out of New Orleans, whether it was his fault or somebody else. I think you add all that up, and for a lot of people now, I've been watching the NBA and watching Anthony Davis since he's entered, this is the year you have to come make your mark. And that's the reason why I have him maybe as an MVP, because he's playing along a guy with LeBron James that will get him easier looks, take some pressure off, and they will win games. And I think that's why he's my front runner to win MVP.
Do you agree with the narrative that Anthony Davis has a better shot at winning MVP than LeBron James?
Yeah, I do, because I mean, I can't get in LeBron James's head. I think LeBron won't be chasing MVPs, in my opinion, Sekou. He's going to always have those numbers and wins and his talent to be an MVP, but I don't think he'll be chasing it. I think he'll definitely love to see Anthony Davis have that chance, that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, but the entire LA basketball scene will be filled with all of these subplots all season long for the Lakers and the Clippers.
We've talked about just some of the favorites, but who are the guys? Welcome back as we continue to forecast the 2020 NBA MVP. Remember back a couple of years ago, Steph Curry won back-to-back MVPs. He could have made the argument back in 2016. He could have won Most Improved Player as well, as he shot up from nearly 24 points per game to over 30 points per game, becoming the first player in league history to win the award unanimously. No Kevin Durant. Klay Thompson's going to miss a significant portion of the season. Welcome back with Sekou Smith, Steve Smith, Jared Greenberg. Talking about the overlooked candidates, we can talk about Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard. We'll throw Jason Tatum into this if he has a breakout year. But Steph Curry, a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame, arguably the greatest shooter of all time. Is it, at this point, are we overlooking or taking for granted how great he is?
No, I don't think we have. I just think we all understood it was hard for him to put up unbelievable numbers. And those are unbelievable numbers. And I think his standard that we get a chance to see will be around 30. That's the capability of him scoring the basketball. I think I love to see his percentage. I think usage rate goes up now. No KD, no Klay. And I think Steph will like this challenge. See what he can do until Klay comes back. And I think also a guy like Draymond Green will help Steph get a lot of easy buckets.
Well, something we've never had to worry about with Steph in his MVP campaigns before is the success of the team. They've been at or near the top of the West every single year during this run. How do you expect the team to do and how that will impact whether Steph Curry is in the race for MVP come March and April?
That's a great point. I mean, during his ascent, the Warriors were doing the same thing, so it was never a question about the team's success. I have the Warriors as a playoff team in the West. That alone, to me, given their circumstance, should put Steph in the larger conversation for MVP. But as Smitty said, Steph's numbers are going to have to be commensurate with what the Warriors are doing to keep him in that conversation this year, because he's had, and I'm not saying this was easy, I think it was as tough as anything for those great players to all take a little bit of a step back for the other ones to be what they are. But his numbers are going to have to take a bump up for him to be in this conversation. He can't come in and do what he did last season and get away with being a big-time MVP candidate.
Sekou, do you expect Damian Lillard to be in the MVP race?
I do. I think Dame, and if we look at the MVP, every year builds on the next one. You have to kind of set a groundwork the season before to be in that conversation. The Trailblazers getting to the Western Conference Finals, even though they got beat the way they did by the Warriors, to me gives Dame Lillard kind of a liftoff for a position in that space this year. I think the Trailblazers had an unheralded and underrated summer. And I think Dame is going to be right in the thick of that if he gets off to a great start this year.
If not for a phenomenal middle part of the season by Paul George, we may have seen Nikola Jokic as one of the finalists for MVP. He finished just outside of that. How do you think he will fare this year with everyone having a bullseye on his back?
You know, and I think also for him is he's got to get in better shape. And we talked about it earlier. He can't have those games where he disappears.
Right.
You can have some bad games where you just came out and this wasn't your night. But there are some days where you look up and you wait for the Denver Nuggets and you wait for Jokic, and he has 2 shot attempts. But he's so good. When you look at these numbers, a guy can basically average 20, 11, and 7. And at 24 years of age, we forgot they were the second best team in the Western Conference. They might be the second best team in the Western Conference again, and his numbers goes up even more across the board. I think we overlook Jokic.
They throw out a few guys to you. Is Kyrie capable of being in the MVP mix?
You know, he is capable, his talent-wise, I think, but for Kyrie, the narrative is he's going to have to do something spectacular for the Brooklyn Nets, Sekou, in my opinion, for them to be in that conversation, and they have to be winning as well.
Yeah, statistically, he would have to have monster numbers, triple-double type numbers, or lead the league in scoring type numbers to be in that mix.
How about another guy in the Eastern Conference that switched teams this year, Jimmy Butler? Do you guys think that the Heat are good enough to be in the playoff mix and Jimmy Butler's capable of being an MVP?
I think Butler potentially could be in that mix, but it's going to be a really tough call to get him in the realm of some of these other guys because we don't project Miami to be among those top 3 or 4 teams. And Jared, you know as well as I do. Name me the last MVP who came from a team that wasn't a contender for that one of those top 3 spots at some point throughout the course of the season.
How about Karl Anthony Towns, Luka Doncic, some of those other guys that put up spectacular numbers?
I love them. I mean, they have chances, but I think the guy we forgetting that's most talented, Joel Embiid.
Sure.
Joel Embiid could easily win the MVP if he plays at a level that he's capable of, and we know he can, and they're winning.
All right, we got plenty more to do on this edition of Forecast MVP. We'll look back at the history of MVP.